Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Josh.
My bad, Carrie. That's how we should talk about starting it.
Yeah, I don't
My
really want to
bad,
start.
Carrie.
Starting already feeling at a deficit.
I know. But I do think we should have our Dumb and Dumber discussion, but we can't force it now because for people listening, we were having a really good
very
time.
Intellectual, very analytical.
That's what I was saying. Hannah should watch Dumb and Dumber with us, not so that she can enjoy the movie, but so she can laugh at us when we're referencing
How
it.
much we're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like when we're quoting it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's why. That's the point. It's all about us.
It is.
Right. Well, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Busy. Like, I came here for this today because I'm garage selling. So, this is what my kids do. We started doing this last summer, where it's part of how they make their summer money. But it's just me and Kason today because all the others are all gone, different places, and so he's home. Hopefully, not selling everything for $1. And hopefully he's not selling things in my garage because we had to open another side because it started to rain and move stuff in. And so I'm like, you know what's for sale and what's not, right?
Yeah, what if all your tools are gone or something?
No, they're right there. I'm not. And people ask about them all the time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It's the first thing they ask. Like, that's the first thing that someone asked about today. Your lawnmowers for sale? I'm like, no, they're not.
No. Okay, well, I hope you can focus and won't be distracted.
This broken one is. Yeah.
Oh.
But yeah, I think it'll be okay. All right. Well, we're going to talk about a few different things. Oh, I got to get this off my head real quickly because Hannah, because you got the headphones on and you're listening to this. If you hear me breathing into the mic, will you let me know so I can move the mic away? Like that, you know?
Yeah.
All right. Because when I was testing it earlier, I felt like I could hear myself breathing. All right. So, so we're going to talk about how to get the most out of therapy. And as I was thinking about, I was trying to figure out, like what topic to do. And I was all proud of myself for coming up with it. And I realized it was probably Carl that really planted the seed. Now thinking about it, because he wrote a really good article about this, and I put that article in the show notes or in the description of the video so you can read it. But I made sure not to review it so I could at least try to be a little bit original.
Okay, good.
Here, so the things that we're going to talk about, we haven't discussed them other than the format before, which is kind of how we like to do it, so it can be as organic as possible. So that's what we're going to talk about is getting the most out of your therapy. So don't go anywhere. And we're back.
Okay.
After our commercial break.
That's right.
Who was our sponsor? So thank you everybody for joining us on Therapist Take. As always, please make sure that you like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when more videos are posted. And of course, if you're listening to this on the audio platforms, we would really appreciate it if you give us that 5-star review if you like the content. And if you don't like it, then just don't do anything. Or, maybe go find a podcast you like, I guess,
Lots of choices.
There's lots of good ones out there for sure. Which, by the way, which one's your favorite? What are you listening to right now?
Well, I listen to The Daily pretty much every day. So.
Oh, that was very clever, though. Can you really be a fan of the show if you don't listen to it daily?
Yeah,
it feels
I don't
maybe a little hypocritical.
I don't always listen on the weekends, but.
Oh well, they probably have one called The Weekend.
It's called something, but it's not The Weekend. What about you? What do you listen
to? Nothing regularly right now. I was always listening to or trying to catch up on Fake Doctors, Real Friends, which is the rewatch podcast of Scrubs. But I always will go and search out anything from Pushkin Industries, which is Malcolm Gladwell's. They're all. They have so many now, and they're always so well done. And so, but yeah, I'm not much right now, other than this one because I have to edit it.
Yes, you've heard this one many times.
I hear this one a couple times, 2 or 3 times a week, probably. Yeah. So, but there are plenty out there, plenty good ones. What was the first one you started listening to? Sorry, I know I'm digressing here.
You are
but
digressing. What's the first podcast I
Yeah.
ever listened to? Oh boy, I don't
Mine was
know.
Armchair Experts.
I mean, that was probably one of the first, but I don't know.
I think that was the very first one. Like when I was like, I'm going to try this podcast thing. And it was, of course, podcasting had been going on for a few years by then, but I just was like,
yeah.
and also a really good podcast. You listen to that one
Yes, I
at
listen to
times.
that one at times too. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about getting the most out of therapy, and we're going to break this down into 4 segments. And so we'll put those on your screen for those of you that are watching this. So we're going to start with talking about the search, searching for your therapist. It's just kind of our take on that. And then what to do in session. So while the session is actually happening, and then what to do in between sessions. And then I think on your screen it's going to say like the end, but it's really like what I call the follow through, not necessarily a follow up,
Right.
but so basically like when therapy is over, therapy really is never over. So what do you do? And so that's kind of where we're going to go with it today.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Very good.
So before we dive into that first one, just kind of off the top of your head, like I'm assuming you think this is probably a good topic to discuss.
I think this is a very good topic to discuss.
Okay, so what makes it a good one?
Because I think it is hard to find a good therapist.
Right.
I think it's hard for people to go to therapy, and then I think the next step is it's hard to find.
Right.
How to go, where to go, with whom, all of the things. I think this is a very important topic.
Right. And so, yeah, there's a lot of courage just to get started. I mean, it takes so much. And then you get into the therapy room, maybe 1, 2, 3 sessions, and it's quote unquote not working, and it can really put a stain on people's therapy experience. And so, we've heard that many times, people coming in and they had a bad experience, and sometimes it is the therapist, and sometimes it's neither. Sometimes it's just,
right.
They're not ready, or the circumstances isn't such that makes them ready. I've had that experience in being on the other side of the couch, where at first I thought it was the therapist that just wasn't good, but it really, when I look back on it, I just wasn't ready for it, And so I'm not saying he was good either, because I wasn't ready to experience
You
it,
don't
to
even
know. Yeah. There to kind of in the spirit of focusing on what you can control,
right.
And as you're trying to determine, like what made this a good experience or not a good experience, you can at least like do some things for yourself to know, like if it's time to search out for a new therapist, I at least know, or at least am confident that it's not me, that it's something I need to do, because I put out the type of effort in that in a way that was intentional and took it seriously to kind of what word am I looking for, like when it comes to what researchers do when they're trying to rule out the variable that is me, in terms of why this experience was or wasn't good, and so that's what we're going to talk about. It's just what people can control themselves, and to maximize on their therapy experience, basically give themselves the best shot. Right. So the first thing in talking about this is the searching for the therapist. And this is, this might be one of the hardest parts.
I think sometimes it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Because especially, it's particularly hard for us because we know all the therapists, right? And like at least who we think are the good therapists,
I know.
right?
And then we're associated with them, so they can't be our therapist.
Right, so they can't be our therapist.
Right.
So it's like, it's particularly tricky for us trying to find someone. But yeah, I mean, I would venture to say that, most people, don't have, most people aren't keeping a therapy resource in their back pocket, right? Because
right.
it's not necessarily something that people are planning on doing, And so when it comes time to do it, it's, who do we go see? What do we do?
Right.
And who's good, who's not good, what type of therapy, all these things weigh in addition to just the emotional barriers you have to get over in order to do it.
Right.
Right.
Right. And then there's the even other parts. Am I going to use my insurance? Does my insurance cover it? How much does it cost? What is the location?
Oh gosh, yeah.
How, am I going to have to take off
Yeah.
work, miss school?
Budgeting time.
I mean, it's a big, it's not a quick decision. When you make a dentist appointment, you just have to figure out how to get that one appointment in, right?
Yeah.
And then, but this is something that's reoccurring, right? It has to kind of be some semi-regularity for most people. So it's got to kind of be enveloped into your life.
Right.
So the commitment isn't just, okay, I got to find a way to carve out 1 hour this time. So it's a bigger deal, is what I kind of want people to hear.
So where would you say would be a good place for people to start then?
Well, what I really think is the best place to start is people that are therapists or counselors, or people that have a therapist or counselor and that believe and you hear good things about them. I really think when it comes to, I feel this way about any health provider for me and people I care about, but definitely with mental health, it's kind of nice to know the human touch, right?
Yeah.
The human, my friend, my mom, my neighbor, whatever, right? I do think that makes a difference.
Right. Yeah, I do too. Yeah, that truly is probably the best place to start, whether it's a friend that has has informed you that they're doing therapy, or your church or some organization you're involved in is supportive of that. They have resources there. But there's still this, even when, maybe a friend refers you, like it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a match.
That's
right. I mean, because in a lot of ways, like finding a therapist, and I know this sounds kind of weird to say it this way, but it's a lot like dating. In a way, it's like swiping left, swiping right type deal. It might seem like a match because you heard good things, but then you get into a room and therapists and clients do build a chemistry together. Does our personalities going to fit? Are they going to, first of all, is this person even equipped to work with the issue that I'm going through? And then if they are, our personality is going to mesh in such a way that I feel safe and feel, like this person can actually help me.
Right. Well, that's another kind of the first step of where do I even look for a therapist is maybe what we're talking about, word of mouth, but then also what type of experience, training, specialty are you looking for? Because there are some mental health providers that are kind of like general practitioners, right? They do a little bit of everything. But then there are some that are very specialized. And so I think it is important to not just go to anybody that has any kind of mental health credentials after their name. But I think today we're talking about getting the most out of therapy. So you're going to get the most out of therapy if you know what you're really wanting to work on. Right. And again, sometimes people are in such a space of anxiety, depression, trauma, especially chronic trauma, that they may not quite know what it is. They may not be able to give such a clear name to it. But I would just encourage for you to take just a little bit of time or ask people that you trust, what do you think would be the most helpful for me if I was going to go and work with somebody? Because I do think that narrows then your search. Am I looking for somebody who specializes in couples therapy? Well, then I probably want an LMFT, right? Oh, I'm really wanting somebody who understands grief, bereavement. Oh, I want someone who has some extra training or specialization around that, right? It's just, I think that is I think that's an important step in getting high quality, good fit mental health care.
Right. And for example, one of the things that we do, or the primary thing that we kind of market toward, is betrayal trauma, right? So like if there's infidelity, for example, that's hit your relationship, instead of going online and finding a general practitioner, so to speak, you might Google or look up through certain therapy directories what therapists are actually working with
Right.
these populations. And by the way, I usually always in the show notes and in the description of our YouTube videos put links to therapy directories. So anybody watching this or listening to this, you can find some therapy directories there. But probably one of the most popular one is Psychology Today.
Right.
So Psychology Today, you're going to find a list of a bunch of general practitioners in your area, basically. And then, like for betrayal trauma, though, there's going to be through ITAP's organization, which is where we were trained under. They have their own therapist directory, and you could find therapists in your area just for that. Or is say that you heard really good things about EMDR, which we did a podcast. You and Rebel did a podcast on that recently, a podcast episode, and so through the EMDR organization has their own, and so you'd be surprised on how many therapy directories are out there based upon what's going on.
Right. There are.
But then the next task, there's so many steps, right? It's just this is going to be so tedious, and this is probably why a lot of people, don't make it into the office, because it's like it just becomes overwhelming just from the start, and they're already overwhelmed, right? And so, because another thing I suggest people do is look the therapist up. Most therapists have websites now.
Yes.
And look them up. When I say therapy, what I've noticed, a lot of psychologists don't.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because they don't need them, because they are extremely busy doing testing and other psychology,
report writing,
clinical psychology things that they do. But most therapists have websites that you can go, you can see their face, you can read about them, you can see if they're doing anything particularly interesting or geared toward the thing that you're doing. Even on Psychology Today now, they're having people put video on so you can hear them speak. Right. We encourage our therapists here to write blogs and to be engaged in certain video things here. So, and that's just helpful to because the last thing somebody wants to do is get in that therapy room and when they're sitting across from that person and go, this is not a good fit.
Yeah.
Which always can happen. It's happened to me.
Sure.
But we just want to minimize that. We want to
try to minimize that. And I would also say then from there, once you, have started maybe looking this up, reaching out and these would be some other things that I would say is that you want whomever you're reaching out to respond to you in a timely manner. Right? You want someone that follows up if they say, hey, answer the phone or respond to your email and say, well, let me check this. I'll get back with you. They actually get back with you. Yeah. Right. You also want a therapist. It's not unusual for a therapist to be pretty busy. Being busy is a good sign.
Yeah,
it means
absolutely.
that people want to stay with them. But if you're in a rush, there are people that are perhaps new to a space and so it kind of asking those questions about how long have they been in practice or what's the usual wait list or I can get in, well, that's great. Is this normal that I can get in? Like it's summertime. So my schedule's a little shifted because client schedule's shifted. So some people can get in. So these are all good things. Like I've heard for a long time, you want a therapist that's busy, right? But you also want to be dealing with a person or an office that's professional. Right. Gets back with you in a timely manner, has processes that make sense about how to get started, answering those basic paperwork, et cetera, questions. That's important too. You want to be treated and get good information from your first point of contact. Right.
Absolutely. And just to be clear too, not being busy does not mean that they're not going to be quality therapists. No. It could mean they're new, right? Because the new therapists that are who basically aren't licensed yet, who are working toward licensure, have a unique challenge that they have to face because they can't take insurances and so it presents a unique challenge, and they're young, and people have this preconceived notion that they're not going to be as good or quality, and I'm not going to get too much into that because we did do an episode on that with Kelly Roberts, where we're talking about newbies, and they can really do powerful really work. Yes. And I remember when we were in grad school, I thought we did good. Yeah. Even how you kind of look back on some memories, you're like, ugh, I was so young and dumb, and I don't have that with my therapy life. Like I look back and I felt like I was still doing good work back then too,
Yeah. But again, that's all
Yeah.
still information that any potential client should have. Like, oh,
Yeah.
they just moved out of state. They're starting, or they're starting their licensure journey.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean they're not quality. It's just information to
Right.
have, right? And everyone deserves to know that
Yeah.
from the get go.
But it's and kind of to kind of to kind of go back to some of the other things we're talking about is like it's not just one thing, right?
Right. It isn't.
It's the referral. It's the you know, looking them up on the website. It's, you know, reading about them. It's, you know, are they busy? It's how the front office is handling, you know, or how they themselves, if they're just by themselves, how they're handling, you know, contacting you. And another piece that you can do if you want, and I would encourage you to, if this is, you know, your first rodeo in a sense of like you haven't done therapy before and you're going through all the kind of the first time jitters of doing it, is to interview your therapist. So most therapists will do a free 10 or 15 minute consultation with you just so you can ask all your questions.
You bet.
You just have to be willing to ask because from our experience, most therapists are very busy. And, you know, you just ask, and I can't imagine one saying no to that.
Right.
I mean, I surely hope not, but
Right.
maybe some of them are that busy. I don't know, but,
Yeah.
so that's, you know, so that it's a tedious process. It could be a little bit overwhelming, but, I think, you know, you minimize the chances of, not finding the right fit. I think if you take some of those preliminary steps.
I agree.
And one thing I tell people a lot, let's just say you get in that room and it's not the right fit, which happens. It's still going to happen from time to time. I tell people to just, you know, give up on the therapist. Don't give up on therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I would much rather someone who comes in and sees me who feels like I'm not the right fit to just give up on me, like, and go find you a good fit.
Right.
You
right.
know,
And therapists are trained to know how to hear that and handle that and still help you. Oh, you don't think this is working out? Let me support you. Here's some other people, places, etc. Or I mean, whatever. So again, you need to be taking care of you.
Yeah, it does not bother me. Now, if it were happening like all the time, then I probably have some stuff I need to look at, right?
Sure.
But no, yeah, I mean, we want people. We're in the business of helping people get better, not in tooting our own horns. And
Right.
so
That's not the business, right?
Okay, so all right, so after that process, they find the therapist, they find someone they perceive that's going to be a good fit, and therapy starts. And now let's talk about suggestions that we might have for how to maximize on your therapy in session, not before session, not even after session, but while session is happening in real time. What are some things people can do to make that a good experience in terms of
Do you think
efficacy?
Let me just ask you questions. I just thought of it.
Well, I like questions.
When you are the therapist in the room, can you tell a difference between the clients that are there getting the most out of that time?
That's a difficult question because I mean, yes, but though, and that's usually based upon, like, you know, some of the things that we're probably about to talk about on what you can do, right, that they're doing. But the reasons why people don't do these things isn't because they don't know to do them usually. It's usually because of how, you know, how their pathology works, right? Like if I'm, you know, for example, I'm sure you're going to agree with me on this, that kind of have an idea of what you want to talk about in the session before you get there. I said this wasn't going to be preliminary, but that kind of is preliminary. But, you know, when you walk into that therapy room, in the beginning, usually therapists do kind of have some steps that they want, some things they want to get to. That's just part of our own, you know, quote, you know, unofficial protocol, you know, that's unique to each individual therapist. But after, you know, 2 or 3 sessions, you know, usually the client's kind of steering the ship there, you know. And so if you don't know what you're here to do or what you want to talk about, then sometimes it can feel a little bit on our end like pulling teeth trying to figure out like what we're going to do this session, you know. But people who don't come prepared like that, I don't necessarily think because they don't know to come prepared. I think a lot of it has to do with some of the emotional barriers of being in this space and what we're here to do.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that's true too. But I do agree. Like, I know the question is just what do you do when you're in in the walls, but I do think you should come in with some idea of this is what I like to help with. This is what I want to work on, or this is what has happened to me. This is what I've noticed. I think that is definitely going to help you get more, use out of that time. And I would also say that you should go in there with the idea that you have an idea of how you want to use that time, and that the therapist is there just starting on that journey with you, right?
Yeah.
So someone who already cuts you off 10 minutes in to tell you what they're going to do, that's probably not going to help you get the most out of that time, right? So you are going to kind of have to, in some ways. I have sometimes people will sit down and say, are you supposed to ask me questions, or do I just start talking?
Yeah.
Right? That happens a lot.
Yeah.
And I say either or, but really what I want is for them to just talk, because I'm here just starting out with them too, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to try to dive in. I mean, it's not like like I said, it's not like I prepared for this or anything, but as my wheels are turning, I'm kind of thinking about some do's and don'ts, and one thing that happens a lot in therapy is they get worried if they're talking too much or not talking enough, right?
Yes, very much.
And the thing I would tell you is don't worry about that. A therapist is supposed to be equipped to know how to manage that. So let's say you're in couples therapy, for example, and you feel like that you're the one talking all the time and your partner isn't. The first thing is like, it's don't worry about that, in the sense of that it's the therapist's job to really kind of manage that and keep the balance. And I feel like I'm pretty good, and I know you are too, about saying, kind of interrupting the flow of somebody saying like, I want to give somebody else a chance to respond to that. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I need to. And I don't mind doing that at all,
Sure.
But do speak up about your concern about the other person not contributing. Right. That is perfectly fine and appropriate.
Yeah.
And so because that might be part of the problem, right? In that particular context.
Right. Sure.
Or if you're worried about something, just feel free to ask your therapist, like that, or just to tell your therapist that, hey, I worry that you think I talk too much, or I worry that you think I don't talk enough, and that's good stuff for us. We like that stuff.
We like to be helpful, because then we can really work through the issues real right in front of us.
Yeah, because that's depth. I mean, that's we're not just scratching the surface.
Right.
With a question like that, don't worry about time.
Nope. I always tell people that's my job.
They're like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I kept you over.
The time, right? Or I only.
Yeah.
You're right. It is my job, and it is our job to keep people on time. And it is not their job. It can feel crummy if you're talking and someone says, "I'm so sorry. We only have a couple minutes. We got to wrap it up." That can feel crummy, but you're just there in this space. One of the things about therapy that makes it very unique is that you are not there to take care of the other human in the room. And it may be the only place on this planet that you don't have to take care of the other human in the room, right? And we don't get...
massage parlors.
Yeah, maybe.
And chiropractors.
Chiropractors. I don't know. I check on my chiropractor. See how she's doing. Yeah.
I always tell her, it's like, you like to hurt me. She's not taking care of me. You're hurting me.
No, it's a good pain, Josh. You know that. We do this for a living. We do pain.
Yeah.
But you don't. You just come in here and you get to share, and you get to lead this. And therapists, especially therapists well-trained and experienced, are going to know that even if you're in a couple and one talks for 40 minutes and the other one for 10, that's still important information that can be helpful, right?
Sure.
And so no judgment. We can figure out if we need to move things right or left.
Right. Yes. I think another thing that we appreciate that a lot of people And probably because a lot of people are non-confrontational, and our job is confrontation. I mean, that's what we do. We're confronting problems and issues every day. And by the way, don't think for a second that we don't have this problem in our personal lives. I mean, it's not that easy in our personal lives.
Josh, you don't have any of those problems.
No, I confront everything. I'm not afraid of anybody,
With compassion
especially
and
yeah.
warm
Absolutely.
directness.
I'm completely direct with you. I tell you just how I feel. I'm not worried you or anybody would be upset at me at all.
I know.
So, but it is easier. All joking aside, it is easier for us. This is our job. That's what we do. We confront things. I think sometimes people, like, they're not having necessarily the experience that they want to have in session. So if we're talking about trying to maximize on your experience in your therapy, so that you don't feel like that, you don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction and just fire that therapist and then move on to the next one, is go ahead and tell your therapist how you're feeling. Like, if your therapist takes that too terribly personal, I'm not saying sometimes it's not hard to hear. Sometimes, I mean, if we're being honest, it's not like I'm itching to hear, like people walk in and say, tell me, all what you feel like I'm doing wrong, but it's not so bad that, I wouldn't want to hear it. I appreciate people telling me that, this isn't going how I thought it would go.
Right.
Or last session I didn't feel heard. And that one actually comes up a lot in couples therapy, where one is feeling more heard than the other. Right. Or I didn't like this thing that you said,
Or sometimes I really appreciate the feedback when we're getting information and we say, well, it looks like we could work on these parts or this part. And I really appreciate when people are like, yeah, that first part, that's not really what I want to go right now. What I want to do is that thing.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Right.
Yeah.
And that is getting the most out of that time, because a lot of people are coming in with complex issues, right? And some people are wanting to address long-term trauma symptoms, and some people are just wanting to figure out how to get prepared for this next struggle.
Right.
And, I think getting the most out of your time is, again, knowing, hey, this is what I want to do, and being able to kind of tell your therapist, this is kind of the chalk lining that I want to put around what we're working on for right now.
Right. Yeah. And then, if there ever comes a time that you feel like that it's time to switch therapists, tell your therapist that too.
Absolutely.
And I feel like a good therapist would help you navigate that.
Yep.
And so there's some in-session tips there. And I think one of the biggest ones is really being intentional and taking ownership of your therapy by having an idea of what you're going to talk about, or what you want to address, and kind of steering the ship at some point. So sooner than later.
Yes, I agree.
All right. So then another aspect of therapy, kind of moving into the third point, or the third segment, is the in-between.
Yes.
Sorry about my
in-between
mic.
sessions, right?
Yeah. So in between the sessions, what do we do? So some therapists, you and I are, it's common for us to give homeworks. Sometimes, though, after I've been seeing people for a while, I don't, because sometimes the homework is just marinate.
We've addressed this. We've drawn attention to this. Continue noticing.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, if someone has a really intense session, the last thing I want to do is give them a homework to go do. I was like, just kind of, the homework is to
breathe.
Yeah. Self-care, and then let this process, sleep on it, and see how it sinks in, So, so then what do we do, and some people really want, so I'm going to let the cat out of the bag here. Like, if you're seeing me and you come in and you're like, so what's my homework? I'm probably not giving you homework. Even if I was planning on it, I might, like, well, maybe your homework is to not do homework, but just in generally speaking, again, thinking in terms of maximizing the experience, what are some things you'd suggest that people do?
I mean, I think that you would probably agree with this. I am so fortunate in having so many of my clients that are willing and able to find their own resources. So they find and have found books and podcasts and community groups, and they're already, learning lingo and, learning about how common something is or whatever, right? And so in between sessions, I think there is a value in continuing to learn, right? There's a psychoeducation part of therapy, right?
Yeah.
And typically in the room with people, you are doing some of that, but we are also, you and I especially, are more process oriented clinicians, more experiential oriented clinicians, meaning we're really wanting to get into the process with people, right? And so if you have trouble with conflict, we want to be, addressing conflict directly rather than just reflecting on conflict, right? So sometimes the homework can fill that gap of that psychoeducation piece, right? So if you're here, especially with us for betrayal trauma, right, or compulsive sexual behavior, right, or you're here from trauma, we're probably going to be giving you some resources of things to look into, right? When our clients are coming in for EMDR, we have a little information sheet, right? We tell people to go learn about this because it sounds a little bit voodoo-y. Here, look at this, right? When people are coming in for betrayal trauma, we have, references and communities we can refer. And I think that's useful. And at the same time, there are a couple of those clients who come in, and my joke to them is often, boy, you've learned as much as I did, right? And I'm the hired professional here. So your homework is to not do that.
Right. Yeah.
Your homework is to just be, right? Like you're talking about, or not just be, but instead let's focus on more of that restore, rest part of it.
So you have had those clients too that are like more well read and than you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is awesome on one level, but also alarming on another, right? Like
It's their anxiety, right? For me, that's always to me telling me a lot about their anxiety.
Well, I think the journey of self-discovery can be quite intoxicating too.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
And I don't think necessarily. I would love to be able to say that it's because it just is really neat and cool to learn about myself, and I do think it can be that, but I think when it gets to that intoxicating point, it's more because of deprivation. So I think about like how, in all honesty, I'm not a big water fan. This is one of my struggles, is making sure I'm drinking water regularly. Water doesn't taste good, It just doesn't to me, and so like I try to, make it really cold because I like that feeling, or put something, some kind of flavored whatever packet of something you put in there to kind of change the flavor of it, right? But when I'm, had a hard workout or been working out in the sun or something for a long period of time and I'm basically dehydrated, water tastes amazing. And I can remember thinking as a kid, like, why does it taste this good all the time? I mean, it is amazing. Well, it's because I'm well overdue at that point. And I think that that's something to kind of be aware of, as much as I love the taste of water when I'm really thirsty, I really need to be drinking it regularly. And it doesn't taste as good, but it's better for me. Right. And now that I say that, I feel thirsty.
Like all of a sudden now you notice.
I feel thirsty to have like little white things forming in my mouth. Yeah. But I think the same can be true in like this journey of self-discovery, where it's like, and people will just throw themselves into it, and because it just feels so good to learn these things about yourself that you never knew, and it's like a shiny new toy. You want to play with it all the time, and but eventually you have to find balance there. So it's just something to kind of be aware of in your in-between time is, yes, look up podcasts, read some books, but another thing that I would say too is like, don't force something that is not you. Like a therapist could tell me to like journal things. It's not happening. I am not a journaler. I just don't do it. Like I figured out that if I journal, I do have some journals at home, but they're to my children. So if I'm writing to my kids, I can journal. But it's like there's some kind of like, what am I supposed to write about?
Mhm.
You know, type what my
Sure.
day. I just lived it. What I have to write, you know? And so like, but there are definitely some other things that are in my wheelhouse, you know? And I think that what's key, despite what you're doing in between session or kind of what method you're using, is just to be intentional with, you know, that experience that you had in session, and at minimum, you know, to be thinking about or to be looking for application,
I agree.
you know, like just be paying attention,
Well,
basically.
I think that's one of the gifts of, you
Yeah.
know, going through steps 1 and 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've been courageous enough to do it. You've fought through all the red tape, hullabaloo of getting there. You've gone in, you've been intentional, you've said what you need to say. I think then it becomes like that whole thing about my mom when she would try to distract us when we were kids. Let's look for purple cars. Let's look for all the purple cars that we see, right? And there actually are some purple cars. But once you've gone to therapy, you're looking for those purple cars, right? You're more aware of, oh, I remember addressing this or hearing this in therapy, and you can't not notice it,
Yeah.
right? And so I think you and I are really standing behind that whole idea of you've already opened some things up. Let them keep
Yeah.
going, right? I tell my clients a lot, like, you don't know this, but now that we've named it, now that we've been curious and tinkering around with it, it's in a different place in your brain. So you're going to relate to this differently just by us getting started.
Yeah.
And so let's continue to
Yeah.
let the process go.
Right. Yeah. I think the last thing I just want to mention is that whatever you have to do, whatever feels like effort,
Yes.
right? And for some
Can't
people
be
listening,
nothing.
exactly. For some people listening to this, that might mean not doing anything, and that's kind of hard for people to hear sometimes. But if it comes easy for you to journal and easy for you to dive into books, and that might be the thing that you need to not do
Yeah.
while you're going through your therapy experience. And if you're the person who finds it difficult, I'm contradicting myself. I hate it when I do this. Now I'm sitting here thinking maybe I should journal more. But yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not in therapy right now, so I don't have to. Damn it! I'm having a battle. I'm having a tug of war right now inside my mind.
I know.
But yeah, you know, if that's the thing that's hard, then maybe that's the thing that you need to try. You know, if
If you're a get up and goer, you need to learn to be still. If you're someone who would rather be still, you probably need to light a little bit of fire. You know, I mean, that's
why I like having you here, Carrie,
why.
because you have a much shorter way of saying the long thing I say.
You know my love of efficiency.
Yes, that's what we're talking about.
I know.
Efficiency and efficacy. Like,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I can do my little rant. I'll do that sometimes in session. I'll be like, so all that to say is like, I probably should have just said this. I was getting there. Verbal processor.
Yeah. So what do we do is to follow.
Did you hear me breathe, Hannah, just now? I was like, sorry. I'm trying not to do that. Ran out of breath.
Dad, please don't breathe. It's very annoying.
Do you ever forget to breathe in the middle?
No.
You never do that? Where you're like, all of a sudden you're like,
I mean, I stayed alive, so no.
Hannah's laughing because I think she forgets to breathe
No,
sometimes.
she's laughing because you were saying.
You know what I think You know what I think happens?
You're long-winded?
No. You know people do that, right? You're sitting there and they're all of a sudden they're like, it's like, what happened, man?
I
Forget to
guess I
breathe?
hear people do that. Yeah.
And I think, is it the parasympathetic nervous system that's working the breathing, or it's sympathetic?
No, it's the para, right?
Parasympathetic, yeah. I think it's like, you know, the part of you that's aware is like I think the parasympathetic nervous system guy that's working the system is maybe a little ADHD down there sometimes. And he's having a little squirrel moment inside your vagal nerve or something. And it's like, and you know, all of a sudden you're choking. And the guy's aware is like, hey, man. And he's like, all right, well, it's all right. You know, and he turns back on. And he's like, you're supposed to be doing that
like
automatically.
I
I
feel like
don't have to remember to breathe.
I'm watching you like make a cartoon right now. That's what I feel.
So,
Okay,
man, I do this all the time.
Squirrels.
I like when we start talking about like how the brain works and like I have a
I know.
cartoon playing
I know.
in my
I've
head.
sat next to you in trainings. I know this, Josh. I've seen you draw them while we're doing this.
Have you seen the Hold My Beer one? Sorry,
Yes, of course I
the
have.
thalamus. Okay, so I digress. Sorry, I don't want to group Carrie in on that.
Please don't.
I won't. We need to finish up with talking about the post therapy. Did we finish up the in between?
So.
You think we covered it all?
I think
Robin?
so. Yeah,
Right.
we summarized.
Yeah, at least as much as I can. I'm sure there'll be something comes up after we shut everything down.
After we stop talking,
We're like, dang it, we didn't. We have to do another one on that one thing because
it's a good
we
thing
let
have
everybody
time.
down.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the end. So after therapy,
The follow through.
the follow through.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think, I've reached a point in my life where when people talk about therapy, and I'm like, in my kind of my effort to destigmatize it, it's like, I used to say, I've gone to therapy before. I have done it before. Now I say I have a therapist, and I may or may not be actively seeing that therapist at that point in time. I just like to know that she's there, and at any given point in time, if I'm not seeing her regularly, that at any given point in time, I can start that process back up.
Yes.
And she becomes a tool in my toolbox of ways to keep and maintain my mental, emotional, and relational health.
Right. Yeah. I like that. Have means it's open.
Right.
Right.
So I think in some ways, I think the follow through for me a lot is perspective. Like, it's changing your perception of how you're going to proceed in life post your active therapy. And it's, for me, that is just the story. I mean, I think for all of us, is the stories we tell ourselves are really important. So the narrative that plays in my head has shifted into, like, I'm never not in therapy, or I don't ever stop having a therapist.
But since I know you so well, that's different than the way we were trained in a lot of ways, Josh.
I know. Sorry, Charlie.
So what does that mean, though? Like, what do you think that means today as we sit here trying to advise people about therapy?
Yeah. Well, first of all, can we just real quickly tell people how we were trained, so we have some context there? Is that,
yeah. I think that's pretty fair.
Right. So we were trained in what's called a brief therapy model. So a lot of licensed marriage family therapy, people hear that and they think that we only do marriages and families, and really it's a model. It's a
systemic relational model,
philosophical approach to how this particular group of therapists do therapy, right? And it was founded in what's kind of termed a brief therapy model, which means like get them in, get them out. 6 to 12 sessions, right? Get them in, get them out. Therapy shouldn't be a forever thing. And I don't know if it's so much like that anymore, because even some of the original, some of the original founders, like the Milan group kind of changed their approach to it. What's his name that does talks about emotional cutoffs, and Bowenian. Murray Bowen, I think, was kind of always kind of in that camp a little bit.
But that sure shifted when I started really getting generational.
Right. Absolutely. So it did. It has. I think it also, like, my shift in it has come from two things. One is working with betrayal trauma clients. I've realized that it just does not seem reasonable to have an in and out approach with betrayal trauma, but then just going through my own stuff. I mean, why not, is my thought. Like, if I get in good shape, am I going to stop going to the gym? I've always wondered why. I am not lying. I've kind of wondered, like, why do you come to seeing somebody who's in there is just ripped, shredded? Like, why are you here? So you're done. Trust me, man. You're done.
I think
but
that's a really good, kind of track, right? And I also think that we're in a space, I guess as humans, really, where we understand that life is more complex, and we understand that everything's connected to everything. And so you may be in a great cruising spot in your life, but that doesn't mean that old stuff won't come back and or new stuff will happen. And it's okay to have a therapist. Yeah. Right? That can help you with and throughout all those different times. But it is different than we were trained. I just know that I know you and we were trained obviously in the same program, and there are lots of really good clinicians that have brief therapy models, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's getting to be something I hear less and less about in the
Mm-hmm.
therapeutic community. And so this whole idea of follow through, right? Instead of
Mm-hmm.
we're done,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like to me, that I don't know, it's almost intuitively feels kind of more like, yeah,
Right.
of course, to be continued until next time,
Yeah, I like that better.
whatever, right?
I do think so. I think it's important to kind of approach it as like the journey of self discovery is, and that's kind of how I see it. Most therapies, like it's always some version of something related to that journey. There is no destination,
Yeah.
and that might feel a little overwhelming hearing that or disheartening. So, but I think where the intentionality comes in is you have to set your destinations. Like so. But there's always the next one.
Yeah.
And so I kind of think of like we just went and saw the Planet of the Apes, the latest one, and of course at the end of it, my kids were like, "Well, there's going to be another one," right? It's because it's like that movie ended. It very clearly ended. We reached the destination, but it's clear that they have left it open for the next part of the journey because it really stories never really end,
Yeah.
And so our story in terms as long as I'm alive, I guess, there's always, another journey to take. But I do think it's important to have destinations along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So the follow through is that you actually get kind of another like level of process in that once you start therapy, now you can have a relationship with therapy. It changes over time, but it's always there. Now you've got it.
Right. Yeah. And, but I think, aside from therapy itself, in the follow through is there are, continuing in the ways that are healthy,
That's
not
Not
overkill.
Right.
Right. And in doing some of the other things that are just good for you
That's
and
right.
self-care, psychoed, learning about others, learning about yourself, all the different modes of your existence, whether it's your emotional being, your physical being, intellectual, spiritual,
relational.
right, social, and not in, kind of understanding the other shoe will drop in a sense, like another bad thing will happen in a sense, but just feeling like you're equipped to handle it so
Yeah.
you don't have to live in anticipation of it,
Right. Right.
So if the other shoe drops, yeah, it can be really bad, but most likely it's, what I always say is like focus on what's possible, what's probable, not what's, I say it backwards every time. What's probable, not what's possible. Right. And so, like, sure, like something really weird and out of the ordinary bad can happen, but probably not, but as you look into your future, there's going to be more losses along the way, but I do think, they're manageable. I mean, we've seen, there's sometimes people go through some stuff that I'm like, how are you even walking around?
I know.
And they figure out how to manage,
They do.
and it's
amazing.
really, yeah, it is. It's very impressive. Clients in a lot of ways, they come in feeling very vulnerable and very weak and feel like failures. And they're so heroic to me in a lot of ways. Like, and I think it's probably what keeps me in this job is helping them see that down, as part of it. Yeah.
Right. And I sure hope they do.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think everyone will, but I think
so.
we're pretty good at helping them do that.
I hope
Sometimes
so.
I don't think we often see that, but that happens through the follow through process. Yeah.
Back to the follow through.
That is like we're like glutton for punishment because it's like we never get to see the end of our work.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But that's okay too. We know
Yeah,
that.
I'm
It's
good with
inherent. Yeah. Well, I think we did a good job. I think everyone will be in therapy now.
Yeah, I think so.
Right?
We went quite. We discussed quite long today.
We did. We could talk.
But you don't have an appointment today.
I don't have a hair appointment today.
Right. So you want to do another? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, we appreciate everybody joining in that has found you found benefit in this. And as always, if you're liking the content that we're doing through the podcast or our YouTube channel or any of our other social media outlets, please share them. In this case, subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Go check us out on the audio platforms too, and leave us a 5-star review, and maybe even write something nice about me this time. Last time I told you to write something nice about Carrie, but you can do it about me this time because
You're nice too.
I'm feeling pretty good about me today.
Good. You gotta go make money at that garage sale.
Oh, I
Sorry,
do.
take you
No,
back to that.
way to take it away, Carrie.
Sorry.
All right. Well, thank you guys.